Hello, and welcome. This is James, and in today's episode, we will be doing this quite a trendy thing at the moment, and it's called Post-Digital Collage. In particular, we will be looking at this image by Jawad Pike. So, if you're interested and you want to learn all the necessary techniques and skills in order to recreate this image, then stay tuned. But otherwise, let's architecture. So, back in March of this year, before this corona shenanigans, my university friend Abby came up to me and said, James, I have this project and a 3D model, and I need to generate some views out of it, so I could, present it to a panel. The problem is that I don't have the necessary skills to do a photorealistic render. Neither do I have the time to learn how to do it. So can you please suggest something? I thought a bit about it, and I said, well, we can probably do an architectural collage. And she was like, yeah, that sounds good. So let's start. First thing we did, as any other student, is we went to Pinterest and we typed post-digital collage in architecture, and then we saw all of this. And then we skimmed through all of them, and then Abby said, oh, I kind of like this, where it's kind of a collage, but it still has a feeling of 3D and it's a unified image. So at the end, we found this image by Jawad Pike, and Abby really liked it. She said that it's a collage, and as you can see clearly here, but what's really good about it is that it still feels like a unified image and not just a selection of random elements, better to say. So just before we continue, I will not be recreating this particular image, because what's the fun in that? Instead, I'll be showing you the necessary techniques one needs to recreate this image. And for this, I'll be using this scene. I basically spent 2 minutes creating this in SketchUp, and you will obviously use your own model. The first step of any image is composition, and it can either make or break your image. So please pay attention when you decide on what the final image will look like. So you probably already know who's Alex Hogrefe. He's a god of architectural presentation. I'll leave the link to this post in the description, where you can basically read through this post, and then rule of thirds, centering, blah 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 blah. And actually, point number 6, correcting the verticals. He's talking about how your verticals should be vertical, duh. And this rule number 7, where you shouldn't really put your camera above the eye level of a normal human being, which is about 1.6 meters. So the first step is to put the camera on the correct height, which is about an eye level. For this, you can click on this icon, which is position camera, and then click on where you want the camera, which is about there, and then it will give you the correct height, which is about 1.67 millimeters. And then just orient the camera so it faces your image. And then the second step is to make sure that your lines are vertical. For this, what you can do is go to camera and then select 2-point perspective. Bang. And then now your lines are vertical. Simple as that. Once you are happy with this, then it's good to create a new scene. If you don't have this tab here, go to Window, Default Tray, and make sure that scenes, styles, and materials are checked. So once you have this, and once you have your camera position, just click on plus, and your scene will be saved. At this stage, it's good to test the composition because you wouldn't want to export everything and then import it into Photoshop, work on the model, and then realize halfway through it's actually would be better if I rotated the model slightly. So I basically just print screen the model and import it into Photoshop. Then I added some clouds just to make it a bit more dynamic. And then I did a rough sort of a blob of where I want the tree to go. And obviously I'm using the rule of thirds, but the problem with this image is that it becomes too unbalanced. As you can see, it's slightly too heavy on this side, and in order to balance it, I've added a sun. So now it's a bit more balanced. So now that we have confirmed that the composition works, we can apply the materials. If your materials are already applied, then just skip to the next step. You may ask, but James, can't I apply materials directly in Photoshop? To which I would reply, yes, of course you can. But I wouldn't advise you to, because if you apply your materials in Photoshop and in the middle of the process you decide that you want to, change the angle of the camera a bit, then you would have to reapply those materials for the entire model. And that is, just a waste of time. Generally speaking, you want to get more than one image from your model. And if you have to, export 10 images and then apply materials to all those 10 images, then it's just a waste of time. So that's why it's better to just apply the materials directly to your models. So you can look at it this way: the more work you can do to your model before you export it into Photoshop, the less work you have to do in Photoshop. So if you only do like one image, then probably it's not as big of a deal. But if you are doing 10 images, then you really want to be efficient with your time. So if your model is textured and finished, the camera is all set up, and you are happy with the composition, it's now time to export your image. And just before we continue, you may probably saw the Easter egg that I have placed in there, and it's all my bit on the social commentary that's happening at the moment. So you want to go to the styles window. If you don't have it, then go to Window, Default Tray, and make sure that the styles is checked. Go to Default Styles and then select the construction documentation style by double clicking on it. Once that is selected, go to Edit, and then in this first window, Edge Setting, uncheck at both the edges and profiles. Also, we don't want to see the axis, so to uncheck those, we go to View and then uncheck Axes. So once you've done that, go to File, Export, 2D Graphic, and just save the image. Make sure that you select JPEG, and in the Options tab, you can uncheck Use View Size and type in whatever the resolution you want. And we'll put 3500 by 1984. That's nice. This is one, anti-aliasing, and best quality. And keep in mind that the ratio of the image would be the ratio of your viewport. So if you have a square viewport, then the ratio would also be square. Okay, I'm going to export two versions, one with the shadows and one without. So uncheck shadows. If you don't have this shadows tool, then go to View, Toolbars, and make sure that you select shadows, and then just repeat the process. To do just one more thing, go to Select and then select this hidden line style. So then we basically see just the outlines. So we're basically just going to export the line work. don't need axes, and again, just repeat the process. Technically speaking, we can go directly into Photoshop straight from here. However, if you want to get those soft shadows, then, well, pretty much the easiest and the fastest way to do that is to render it. And you can use whatever the engine you are comfortable with, Enscape, Lumion, V-Ray, whatever. I'm gonna use Enscape, and if you don't want to do that, then just skip to the next step. So you can basically just look at my settings and just repeat them. So this is the rendering tab, this is the image tab, atmosphere tab, and the capture tab. For the capture tab, we want to basically put the same dimensions as we did for our SketchUp export images, and we want to select export object ID, material ID, and depth channel as well. Once you're happy, render. Does it really fast. So as well as having the white model, we want to export the rendered version. And last but not least, we want to have the same white model but without the sun. So in the atmosphere, we just have to crank up the density of the clouds. So at this stage, you should have the following images: your SketchUp line work, SketchUp raw no shadows, SketchUp raw with shadows, Enscape white model with shadows, Enscape white model no shadows, and Enscape realistic render. And there are also these images which we will use for selecting the needed elements. And if you have all of these, then well done. You can now close SketchUp and move into Photoshop. So I already have this file open where I tested the composition early on. We can now hide it and import our images. The best way to do it is simply select them and just drag and drop. Okay, we will start with the base, no shadows. We'll just copy the image, and then we put on top the base with shadows. And I don't like how harsh are these shadows, so I'm just basically going to decrease the opacity by 50, maybe 60. Yeah, that sounds that looks better. So once we have that, next step is to add our render. Drag and drop our render with the sun. Again, if you didn't render it, then what you'd have to do is basically, recreate this but by hand, which means you have to basically create a new layer and then select an area you want to draw in. Then select a brush, probably a darker brush, make sure it's the soft one, and then shadows, put it on multiply, reduce the opacity to about 25, maybe even 10, and just draw it by hand. So again, you can do it, but it's basically going to take you some time, and it's just easier and faster if you just put on top the render image and then just put it in multiply, and that's it. And it's slightly too dark, so we want to adjust it. Just go to adjustment tab, and if you don't have it, window and then adjustments. Then select your curves and make sure the adjustment layer is applied only to this layer. And to do this, you basically have to hold down Alt and then move your mouse between the two layers until you see this sign, and then just left click on your mouse, and then the selection is applied only to the layer below. Okay, so this is with and this is without. No, just slightly, nothing major. And then we might try this one. Not sure if it'll work, but anyway. So again, we want to. And interestingly, the render with soft light provides much better shadows, as you can see it in here. So this is the one with direct sunlight, and this is the one with sort of diffused light. So this is the one with the sun, and this is the one with softer shadows. That's why we exported two of them. And then to finish it off, we just put the last textured render on top. At this stage, you kind of just have to go through different modes and see which one works the best. So let's just cycle through them. Okay. Oh, okay. So this is the soft light. Actually made quite a difference. And reduce the opacity to about 50. Yes, there you go. I mean, and if for some reason the soft light doesn't work, just basically cycle through these different modes and then see the one that works best for you. And then just before we continue, let's just slightly change the lighting. So again, this is how our image would look without the render, and this is how it looks with the renders. Quite a difference though. So as you can see, our image is basically comprised of all of these layers at this stage. And what I like to do is to reduce it to just one layer, because it's easier to work with one than with all of these. But it's important that you work in a non-destructive way, meaning that you do not delete anything. So what I like to do is I like to copy all of these, okay, and then merge them. Then let's call it save one. And essentially what we've done is we created this little autosave where we have reduced all of these layers into one, but then these layers are still there. So if we then later on we decided to go back and change something here, then we would still have this work all done here. So I would then select all of this and then name it process 1. Okay, so now we basically reduced all of those layers to one. So if we look at our composition setup, then we see this sky rectangle. So let's work on it next. So as you can see, we have a problem because the sky covers this section of the building. And basically there are two ways of dealing with this. Either we delete the background of the building and then put the sky behind the building, or simply remove this section from the sky layer. And I'll probably do that. I could either select this area manually with the polygon lasso tool. However, the faster way is to go back to our exports and copy one of the masks layers. There you go. Then we can just select the black color, hide it, and now we have to invert it, because there you go, invert it, and delete. Voila! See, it's all about saving time. Now let's add some clouds. And again, let's apply clouds to the sky layer and reduce opacity to about 10, maybe a bit more, 15. Okay, maybe add another layer of clouds. that's done. Okay, so that's done. I feel like this guy is slightly too high. Probably reduce it by another 35 mil. But again, we don't like to delete stuff. We just want to hide it, so then we can go back if we want to. So it's good. Okay. So let's just select the lower portion and then click on make a mask. There you go. So essentially we just hid this top section. See, it's still there if we want to bring it back. So at this stage it's time to bring in people, plants and trees, and hopefully you do have some sort of a library with them, but if you don't, just go on Google and type in people, trees, PNG. Okay, I have already downloaded some, and basically again just drag and drop. This person came from Skullgubar. Hopefully you know the website. If you don't, I'll leave the link in the description. I'll just do the same with the tree. There you go, enter. Oh, one more thing. When you drag and drop images, they become sort of smart objects. And what does this mean is that you can resize them as many times as you want, and they would still have the original quality to them. But the problem with that is that you can't edit them, so you basically have to rasterize them, delete whatever you don't want, and then right click, convert to smart objects again. Let's position the tree where we want it. We also want to adjust it slightly. We want to actually make this base tree slightly darker than it is. And I'll show you why in a minute. We also want to do the same to the person. Maybe the best way to do it is actually by using curves rather than that slider. Okay, so let's make this slightly darker. And also, if the tree has sort of sunny and shaded areas, then make sure that it matches whatever your scene does as well. So now that these are done, we can add some highlights. So if you go back to this reference image, we can see that both the trees and vegetation, as well as people, they have strong highlights. So we basically have to recreate those as well. So let's start with the person. Let's create a new layer, then apply it to our person and call it highlight. What we want to do then is basically draw the direct sunlight, and let me just do it and then I'll explain it. So basically what I did, I just tried to draw the sort of the area that would be hit by direct sunlight if this person stood there, and obviously I had to match this angle. And to do this, you need to understand the basic principles of how light interacts with 3D objects, and I'm afraid like there's not much I can do. Just have to go on Google and watch some videos. But anyhow, so the person is done, and now we repeat the same process to the tree. Okay, so here they are, and obviously the more time you spend on drawing these shapes accurately, the better it will look. So now we have to add some shadows to the person and the tree. To do this, we can basically copy the person. There you go, put it beneath our base, and then edit, transform, and distort. And then we can just distort it so it feels right. We can use this line to match the angle. Okay, so once we've done that, just put person shadow. We want to go to adjustments and then click on hue and saturation and basically change the lightness. Oh yeah, obviously don't forget to apply it to the shadow. There you go. So this is with and without. So essentially our shadow just becomes black. And then we want to select our shadow and just reduce the opacity so it matches the closest shade of shadow. Okay, that looks about right. And then we just want to repeat the same process for the tree. Okay, and looking at our test, the last thing to do is to add the sun. So, create a new layer, sun. And also, if you're going to put the sun in your image, make sure it matches the direction that's on your render. Because you don't want to put the sun here and, you know, because clearly the shadow shows that it's sort of coming this way. Okay, so there you go. Change the opacity to about 20, 35, 50. Okay, yeah, maybe 50, that's fine. Okay, so now that all of the elements of the image are in place, it's time to do the magic. The next stage is to add noise, and trust me, this will really transform the image. So to do this, you go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. And then we can basically adjust it to where we like it. I usually go with monochromatic. Maybe like 15. Maybe that's too much, so maybe 10. Okay, there you go. Okay, and already this looks much better than it was. So this was not without noise, and this is with noise. Okay, so then we copy this and call it noise. So step 1 was to add noise. Now step 2, we go to filter, filter gallery, and then under artistic, we click this selection called film grain, right? And then we basically adjust it so the image is a bit more uniform. And then once you're happy, hit OK. We go to filter, filter gallery, and then under brush strokes we select spatter, and then just basically play with these numbers until you are happy. And what this does, it adds a bit more, well, spatter. It basically gives a bit more of a hand-drawn effect. Okay, so that was step 2, and this is step 3. See the difference? As you can see, these 3 steps is what added so much life and character to our image. And obviously, you can skip any of these steps to achieve different results. Maybe you want something a bit more subtle. just add a bit of noise, but you can go all the way through with it. And then the very last step is to add some paper textures. Basically go on Google and find some watercolor paper. I already downloaded it, and there you go. So we'll just go here. Once we're happy, just select multiply, bang, and then this one as well, then again multiply, and then just basically play with these numbers until you're happy, and there you go. And generally speaking, this is it. There is though one more step you can do if you want. If you remember, we also had this line work layer that we were exported. So if we just go to image adjustments and then invert it, and then move it below our paper textures, and then just select, put it on screen. So again, you can go with or without it, it's up to you. Maybe reduced opacity, but again, the choice is yours. So that's it. I mean, there's not much to it really. It's a very fast and easy way to create images with loads of character. And if you did enjoy this video, then please hit that like button, subscribe, and make sure that the bell button is checked, because I'm doing regular videos and you don't want to miss any of them. Also share the video and maybe comment in below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. This was James, and until next time, that's architecture.